Good morning. Today is Wednesday, March 19th, 2025. People ask me why I don't speak often about anti-Semitism. It's certainly an important subject, and it is certainly a relevant topic. And my answer is, I have very little to say about it, other than it's terrible. There are many opinions about the causes of it and about what to do about it, and I don't have much insight to share. So, yes, I could say it's very important, it's terrible, what are we going to do? But after that, I just don't have so much to say. But today I do. Today I'd like to share with you part of a recent interview that Daniel Gordis did with Rabbi Raphael Shore. So Raphael Shore is a filmmaker and a human rights activist in Israel. He's the founder of Open Door Media. The word Open Door is a play on words. Open door in English, but D-O-R, dar, like generation in Hebrew. He lives in Israel. And he is a very important figure in the public discussions about Jewish identity and anti-Semitism and the state of Israel. He has produced 18 documentaries, and his latest film is titled Tragic Awakening, a new look at the oldest hatred, and the film is accompanied by a book. It's his first book, and the title of the book is Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? Learning to Love the Lessons of Jew Hatred. Okay, very compelling titles. So the interview begins with Gordis asking, I don't know how many thousands of books have been written about anti-Semitism. And some of them are over 1,000 pages long. So what are you, Raphael Shore, what are you bringing new to this discussion? And he says, well, the twist in my film and my book is that we have gotten it all wrong up till now. So the question is, the central question about anti-Semitism is, why the Jews? Why is it that we've been hated so intensely, so pervasively, so consistently for 3,000 years? Everyone's asking that question. And of course, October 7th brought it all back. Everyone's asking the question, why the Jews? And he says, I believe we've gotten the answer incorrect, and it's doing a tremendous disservice to who we are. Now, he explains how we've gotten it wrong, first of all, is what Prager and Telushkin write in their classic book, Why the Jews? This is really a classic book, and if you have not read it, I recommend it highly, by Rabbis Prager and Telushkin, Why the Jews? And they write that a misconception is the de-Judaization of anti-Semitism. In other words, what many people have said is that anti-Semitism has nothing to do with being Jewish. It's, we're the scapegoats. We just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or someone like Hitler is just insane, and he managed to place the blames in German society on the Jews because they were a convenient scapegoat. So in other words, there's nothing rational about it, and there's nothing Jewish about it, but for 3,000 years we've just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. We've always, in the last 2,000 years, we've always been a minority in society, and either Jews had too much money or too little money. Either we were too far to the right or too far to the left, or we were too similar to people in the wider society, or we were too dissimilar to people in society. In other words, society needs a scapegoat. It could have been anybody. It's just that coincidentally, consistently, it's been the Jews every time. And the point that Shore makes is that it's not a coincidence. And there is something very Jewish about anti-Semitism. And here's the shocking point. The shocking point is that the truth about anti-Semitism comes directly from Adolf Hitler. In other words, Hitler explained exactly what he was going to do. And he wrote it clearly before World War II. He wrote that he was intending to do a genocide against the Jews because of what the Jews stand for. Not because he needed a scapegoat, but rather, Jews represent an ideology that we brought into the world, Judaism, the Torah, and he was going to destroy that. And so it's quite remarkable that we understand, from Shore's point of view, we understand anti-Semitism through the writing of Adolf Hitler. Because what we see in the writing of Adolf Hitler is that his explanation of why he hates the Jews, of anti-Semitism, is the same as the Torah's explanation for anti-Semitism, which occurs clearly in the Talmud, which is that there is a reaction, anti-Semitism is a reaction to the Jewish mission given to us originally by God at Mount Sinai. And so anti-Semitism is a resistance against the Jewish mission of bringing ideas into the world, moral principles that came to us from Mount Sinai. And to have that mission that was given to us, the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, it's a tremendous responsibility. And there's a trend to resist this understanding among Jews and to find some other explanation, scapegoating or too left or too right, all the other explanations, because to a certain extent it lets us off the hook. Because if it has nothing to do with Judaism, with being Jewish, so then, it's just that the only thing to say about anti-Semitism is that people should stop being so irrational. But once we understand that anti-Semitism is really about something deep about who we are, then that raises the question, well, what do I do with that information as a Jew? In essence, he says, Hitler was saying that the Jewish people are a global spiritual superpower, and they have influenced Western civilization in such a fundamental, deep way that they have brought their ideology of humanitarianism, love, peace, brotherhood, God, ethical monotheism, and it has become the foundation of Western civilization. And while Adolf Hitler was certainly evil, he was right. Now, of course, it's much easier just to say Hitler was a raving lunatic. He had no ideas that made any sense. But that's just not accurate. From 1920 to 1945, Adolf Hitler was very, very consistent in what he wrote and what he said. He was clear that he was fighting the Jewish mission. And the point I mentioned before, we come to the Torah, and it turns out that the Torah says the same thing. The Talmud says the same thing. The Talmud says it's a play on words. So the revelation of God occurred on Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, Har Sinai. So the Talmud has a play on words. The name Sinai, which we pronounce in English Sinai, but Sinai is related very close to the word sin'ah, which means hatred. And the Talmud says that hatred of the Jews came down to the world with the revelation at Sinai. Har Sinai is responsible for sinah against the Jews, anti-Semitism. Again, it's just meant to be a play on words, but the idea is that the mission that we are given at Mount Sinai creates what we're supposed to do in the world, how we are supposed to act as a model to the nations, creates animosity against people who are against that mission. At Mount Sinai, God revealed himself to the Jewish people. He revealed the message of what he wants from humanity, the purpose of human life, how to work it. And he gave the Jewish people, he gave us the task of bringing these ideas into the world, and that caused hatred to be solidified against the Jews. So in other words, anti-Semitism is a resistance to our Jewish mission in life. And he explains it as follows. So, and again, Adolf Hitler writes this very, very clearly. Hitler said there are two ways to look at the world. Now, what he says here is not new. It was a very widely accepted and understood concept. So, in the late 19th century, there was the writing of Darwin, of evolution, and that idea is that animals evolve and become more and more developed through the process of natural selection, and that means the weak are going to be killed and the strong will survive, and that's how the species will evolve. And so there developed a line of thinking that we refer to as social Darwinism, that the same thing applies to human beings, to societies. So Hitler looks at the world in the early 20th century, and he says there are two views of the world, and these views are in conflict. There's the Jewish view, which has been dominant and successful, which has to do with morality and brotherhood and ethics and holiness. And he says that view is in conflict with social Darwinism, which says that the successful way to be in life is to be strong and to fight everything that is weak, and to kill anything that asks for understanding or benevolence. And he writes that he, Hitler, is going to be humanity's savior. I'm going to be humanity's last chance to wipe out the Jews and their ideologies and replace it with might makes right, and therefore destroy the weaker ones, the Jews, in order to save humanity. That's what Hitler writes. That's what he thought. And the principle behind this is that Jews and Judaism represent the world with a very high bar of standing up for what it means to be a human being, what it means to give human freedom and responsibility. That's a very, very high bar. And we see this reflected not only in Germany, but the same thing happens in the Soviet Union and China, which also completely repress religion. That's why they always go for the Jews. Evil always comes for the Jews, because it is a clash of two worldviews, one of benevolence and one of authority and power and being able to control. So the Jews have to go. Now, one of the things that Shore explains, and this is really very important, and I think this is something that we discuss all the time, is that the Torah and Judaism is very nuanced. It's not black and white. It's not simplistic. So the Torah understands, Jewish law understands, that freedom and holiness and loving your fellow, all of these things that the Torah mission stands for, they're not going to come automatically. They don't come without war, without conflict, without fighting for it. And obviously today this is very relevant. We're dealing with Hamas. So, what do we do with the evil that is in front of us? We don't naively try to make peace with it. I think we see very clearly what has happened with all our attempts over decades to try to make peace with it. We have to deal with it. I'm not getting into politics or military policy. I'm just saying it is clear that we cannot live next to a group of people that just want to kill us and will keep trying to kill us no matter what else happens. So we have to deal with it. We can't just be, simplistic and say, no, we don't ever fight. We don't ever take up arms. We just practice love and brotherhood. No, that's pacifism. Judaism is not a pacifist religion. There's complexity to what the Torah, to what God wants from us in terms of morality. So there are times when we also have to fight for it. But anti-Semitism arises when we are subject to another entity, a person, a government, a society, that sees what we stand for as a weakness, as a threat that needs to be opposed or obliterated. But here's the real point. Here's the point of Shore's work, and this is the point that I want to share with you most importantly. Because Shore says that his purpose in making the film and writing the book is not so much to explain why Jews have been hated, the reason for anti-Semitism, and I want to just share with you that's not my purpose in sharing this with you today. That's not so much a question that interests me. The real question is, what do we do with that information? And Shore writes, and I agree completely, that we as a people, the Jewish people, I think we've become a little bit too obsessed with anti-Semitism, and we've lost track of our positive story. Because if this is the reason for anti-Semitism, then we need to do a better job. That's what he calls the tragic awakening. What happened on October 7th is tragic, but it leads to an awakening for us to ask ourselves, okay, there's all this anti-Semitism, and the anti-Semitism, according to Shore, is coming because of who we are and what we believe and do. Do we understand who we are and what we believe and what we should do? Do we appreciate what our mission is that is so strongly opposed by others? He tells the following story. Raphael Shore is originally from Canada. So I think Toronto, I'm not sure. He's been living in Israel for a long time. So he tells this story. In 1982, Eli Wiesel came to the University of Toronto. Shore says he was studying there at that time. And Eli Wiesel gave a speech. And Eli Wiesel said, this is 1982, he said, the Jewish people are like a messenger who has been hit over the head during a long journey. So they're on a long journey, this messenger, and they got hit on the head, and when they woke up, they forgot what their message was. And they even forgot they were messengers. In other words, over the course of the last 2,000 years, the level of knowledge of Jews about Judaism, the level of care of Jews about Judaism, of course it waned, especially in the modern period. And Jews, over the last 200 years, so many Jews, to our dismay, drifted away from Judaism. It used to be that we all understood that we were messengers, that we had a message to bring to the world, a mission to bring to the world. But at some point, many of us got hit over the head, and when we woke up, we forgot. We forgot what the message was we're supposed to give, and we forgot even that we are messengers. And Shore writes, I'm trying to allow Jews to re-explore what it is to be Jewish. And I think ironically, anti-Semitism is a great vehicle to give people an opportunity, because everyone is asking now. We've talked about this before. Everyone is asking now, what's it all about? Why the Jews? Why is all this anti-Semitism coming about? And what he writes is, this is an opportunity. We've discussed this in certain ways before. This is an opportunity because people are saying, it doesn't make any sense. Anti-Semitism doesn't make any sense. So if we can look at this as not because we're a scapegoat, not because we're in the wrong place at the wrong time, not because it's irrational, but let's have a tragic awakening. Let's go deeper. Let's have a conversation about ourselves, about what anti-Semitism says about who we are as a people, what we need to be, who we need to be, what is our mission, and what should be doing, what should we be doing. And these are the questions that we should ask ourselves. And he concludes with this point. He says, and he's speaking now, right? March 2025. He writes, it's awesome. He says, it's an interview. He says, it's awesome to be Jewish. That's the understanding that we should have. If you know the depth of what anti-Semitism is, you should come away with a great lift, being empowered to be part of this amazing people. We have this responsibility. We have this incredible mission, the Torah, and we are its messengers. Yes, of course, it elicits anti-Semitism because it's so powerful. Because those who want brute power must oppose it and try to destroy it, but they have not succeeded. And so anti-Semitism should be the cause of our reawakening. To think about who we are as Jews, to think about the mission that God gives us, and to more actively live it. Fulfill God's mission for us, the Jewish people, on this earth. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.